because that's the threat they're worried about. Yeah, they're what's called a crazy state in international relations discourse. There's a technical term, crazy state. And and they've said, yeah, we can be a crazy state. In fact, there's even a name for it in Israel. It's called the Samson complex. Remember, if you read the Bible, that the first suicide bomber, who was highly honored, incidentally, was Samson. Samson, you know the whole story about his hair and Delilah and everything, but at the end, he was blinded, he was a captive of the Philippines, and he got his hair grew back, he got his strength back. And the story ends with Samson standing in a temple with lots and lots of Philistines around, and he's standing between two columns, and he pulls the columns down, of course commits suicide, but he killed a lot of Philistines, and the text says very proudly, he killed more Philistines in his death than in his lifetime. So if you want, he's the first suicide bomber. And the Samson complex, what it means is... pardon? Can't hear. I'm sorry, I can't hear. I can't hear. But what's called in Israel the Samson complex, and internationally too, is exactly what you're talking about. The possibility that they might just decide to commit suicide and bring down a lot of the rest of the world with them. I don't think it's very likely, frankly, but it's a possibility, and it's been a concern of U.S. planners. The way to overcome that concern is very straightforward. Another case where the United States could join the world, and in this case, the world even includes the American population. There's much concern, I don't have to tell you, about the alleged threat that Iran poses. So Iran might develop nuclear weapons and all kind of horrible things will happen. Well, there's a sensible way to deal with that, a very sensible way, namely to establish a nuclear weapons-free zone in the Middle East. Okay, have a nuclear weapons-free zone with verification procedures, which is perfectly possible. Then that would be the end of Iranian nuclear weapons, it would be the end of Israeli nuclear weapons. It would mean that U.S. forces in the region can't deploy nuclear weapons. Okay? Practically the whole world is in favor of this. The American population is strongly in favor of it. The U.S. and Britain are committed to it more than any other countries for a simple reason, which is right in front of your eyes, but nobody's willing to talk about. When the U.S. and Britain invaded Iraq, they tried to construct a kind of a thin legal cover for it. It was so thin, nobody paid much attention. But they tried, at least. And the legal cover invoked a Security Council resolution, Security Council Resolution 687 in 1991, which called on Iraq to dismantle its weapons of mass destruction. And the U.S. and Britain claimed, well, they hadn't done it, so, we can invade because the resolution is still in force. As I say, nobody paid much attention, but they did invoke that. Well, if you bother to read UN 687, which is easy enough, look it up on the Internet, Article 14 commits the signers to moving towards establishing a nuclear weapons-free zone in the region. Okay? That's the U.S. and Israel, the only countries that invoke that resolution. In fact, recently invoked it. So, yeah, they have a special commitment to do it. And that would alleviate, maybe end these problems. But that's another case where you've got to get the godfather to change his position. Incidentally, it's not just here. I mean, Obama talks about how he wants to get rid of nuclear weapons. Okay, talk's easy. There are ways to proceed. Ways to proceed, for example, are by establishing nuclear weapons-free zones around the world. It doesn't deal with everything, but it's a step, maybe the most important step. And there has been some progress on that with a constant impediment from Washington still continuing. Let me tell you where it stands, if you're interested in nuclear weapons and proliferation, or maybe survival for another couple of years. Just a couple of months ago, there was a nuclear weapons-free zone established in Africa. There was a lot of debate and negotiation, but finally the African Union did agree to have a nuclear weapons-free zone. one problem. Britain and the United States don't agree. Well, which ends it. They don't agree because there's an island, Diego Garcia, which is part of Mauritius, a state in the African Union, and Britain, under orders from the master, it was a British colony, kicked out all the population, sent them go rot somewhere else, because the United States wanted to build a big military base there. Well, that military base uses nuclear weapons, and in fact, the U.S. nuclear submarines are deployed there. And it's not academic. That's one of the major bases that the United States and Britain use to bomb the Middle East and Central Asia. Yeah, it's bombing from Diego Garcia. So they don't want this base to be free of nuclear weapons, and therefore they've blocked the African Union zone. In fact, just last December, the Navy Department announced that they're sending a submarine tender to Diego Garcia to service nuclear submarines. Okay? That's pretty serious stuff. These are not abstract, these are actual bombings going on in front of our noses, and they have nuclear weapons there. Okay, that's that nuclear weapons-free zone. There was another one established in the Pacific. There is a Pacific nuclear weapons-free zone. That goes back much farther, about 1985. The French refused to accept it because they wanted to use French islands for nuclear weapons tests. Okay, finally they carried out their nuclear weapons tests and they accepted. The United States doesn't accept it because those Pacific islands, the ones that vote with the United States alone in UN declarations, those are U.S. military bases which store nuclear weapons, and U.S. nuclear submarines pass right through there. So that one's scotched. And the Middle East, the most important would be the Middle East zone, but that isn't even on the agenda. But it answers exactly to the questions that whoever it was raised. It would also have the side effect of eliminating whatever the Iranian threat is supposed to be. But that's just not on the agenda. It's our problem.
Do you see any sign that the Obama administration might take a harder line with Israel? I'm thinking particularly of the rift that seems to have developed over the issue of settlement freezes between the Netanyahu government and the Obama administration. Might this augur a change in official American policy or an amelioration of the situation?
Might the stand of the Obama administration augur a change in U.S. policy?
Yeah.
Nothing that I can see. Obama has been very explicit about not changing U.S. policy a whit, taking a very strong position on this. He did make one statement that everybody hails and Israel is very worried about. He said that Israel should stop expanding settlements. That's nothing. He was quoting Bush. Bush said the same thing. In fact, he was quoting the famous roadmap. In fact, he used the actual words of the roadmap. There is a theoretical agreement called the roadmap by the quartet, the United States, UN, Russia, Europe. That's supposed to be the plan for peace. It says Israel must stop any settlement expansion, even for natural growth. So, Obama quoted it. That amounts to zero. He also quoted it with a wink. He said, I'm not going to do anything about it. He was quite explicit about that. He was asked, in fact, one of his spokesmen was asked in a press conference, are you going to take any action in case Israel proceeds to expand? Not a very dramatic move. George Bush #1 did take some action, kind of a mild tap on the wrist, but he did something as punishment for expansion. Obama said, no, we're not going to do what Bush did. This is purely symbolic. Okay, that's a way of telling Netanyahu, don't worry about it. I'm just repeating what we all know to be vacuous. Furthermore, the whole issue of settlement expansion it's a diversion. The issue isn't expansion of illegal settlements, it's their existence. and the policies that I described, the convergence policies. So if you worry about the expansion of illegal settlements, I mean, even if you were to stop it, it wouldn't mean anything. And Netanyahu understands he doesn't have to stop it. On other issues, Obama has been quite clear in saying that he does not mean a word he's saying about a two-state settlement. The point at which he made this most explicit was in his, in fact, one and only major speech about the Middle East, about the Israel-Palestine issue. Shortly after coming into office, he announced the appointment of George Mitchell as a negotiator, and he said, he's very forthcoming, tells everyone he loves them. So he was telling the Arab states, we love you.